Hello there. Today I'm taking another look at a wine from the Douro Valley, a red wine. On this occasion this is Quinta de Vesuvio's Pombal de Vesuvio. This is the 2017 vintage of that. Now, Quinta de Vesuvio is arguably one of the greatest port quintas. It's located high up in the Douro Valley and it's quite remote. The quinta's buildings are a magnificent house, chapel and winery that all date back to 1827. They have 137 hectares of vines here, and being in the upper Douro, they're at quite a high altitude. The lowest vineyards are down by the river, and they're somewhere in the region of 130 metres above sea level. The highest vineyards go up to an altitude of 430 metres above sea level. And being a long way inland ensures that there's quite a large diurnal variation. So in hot summers you get a real cooling effect at night that enables the grapes to retain quite a lot of their acidity and enables them to keep far better balance. The soils here are predominantly schistous and there are granite outcrops throughout the property. Now, the estate was sold by the Warre Porthouse, who had got into a bit of financial difficulty back in the late 80s, and in 1989 they sold Quinta de Vesuvio to the Symington group. Symingtons, who have Graham's, Warre's, Dow's, Smithwood House. And the Symingtons set about to restore Quinta de Vesuvio's reputation. And they've done that by investing in the property, but also by keeping the approach to winemaking here very traditional. I mean, for instance, they still tread their vintage ports in manual lagars here, so that can be very labour intensive. Not only do they make vintage port here under the Quinta de Vesuvio name, as we can see today, as well as making port, they also make a range of Douro table wines. Principally, there's the Quinta de Vesuvio Tinto, and the Pombal de Vesuvio is sort of a second wine. It's probably fairer to say it's a second brand, because actually it comes from a particular set of vineyards rather than being wines that have been declassified at the blending stage from inclusion into the first wine of the property. The name Pombal evidently refers to the dovecot, and that sits in the middle of these vineyards, which lie at about 200 metres above sea level, and I'm told are predominantly planted with Touriga Nacional. Now, I've seen two different grape blends for this wine, and one of them is Touriga Nacional dominated, which sort of makes more sense, and the other one came from the producer's website, so I'll go with the information the producer is supplying. And they say that this was 54% Touriga Franca, 40% of Touriga Nacional, and 6% of Tinto Amarilla. Now, 2017 was a stupendous vintage in this part of the Douro. Generally, it was a hot vintage. It was one of the hottest on record. Certainly, it was hotter than any of the preceding 40 years. Thankfully, there was a slight respite to the heat in September, but it was quite a dry year. The vines adjusted and I suppose reduced their crop size a little here, and harvest began on the earliest ever recorded date for Quinta de Vesuvio, the 3rd of September. The quality of the fruit was thought to be exceptional. It was healthy, it had lovely ripeness, but still retained good freshness. Fruit was harvested into 20 kilogram boxes so that none of the fruit was damaged by being crushed by other fruit being put on top of it. At the winery, the bunches were sorted by hand. They were destemmed, and then the individual berries were again sorted. Now, probably that means that was done with an optical sorter. So any berries that were underripe, undersized, damaged, or had any deformity or impurity in any way would have been removed by the machines at that stage. The winery allows the fruit to be fed by gravity into small batch fermenters, and the individual batches are kept separate during fermentation and up until blending. After fermentation, the wine spent 8 months in barrel. Now, this was French oak, and it was a mixture of 400 litre and 225 litre barrels. I'm given no information as to how new that oak was, but I would guess probably not a huge proportion. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? I've got a wine here that is deep, it's dark, it's got a vibrant ruby red colour with a touch of purple. It's opaque, I can't see through the wine in the glass there, I can't see the stem of the glass. As I swirl it, the label says this has 14.5% alcohol. The statistics I've seen say it's actually 14.4, but that's hardly going to make a difference. And the wine is slowly forming tears that are quite slowly running down the glass. So we've got a wine that's quite viscous here. So let's see what we make of the aromas, shall we? The aromas are rich, they're quite plush, quite luscious, very high ripeness, they're notes of beautiful, clean, plummy notes, but clean, high ripeness, dark red to black notes, almost a sort of a velvety plushness to the aromas even. And you are getting sort of heady note. It smells very ripe, it smells very alcoholic. So as for taste. On the palate, all that richness is translated into quite a dense, ripe, much more black fruit through to black licorice richness. There really is a concentrated licoriciness, perhaps followed by touches of sort of cocoa, a little chocolatey note there. But actually the freshness of the wine stops it from being quite as sort of smooth and soft as something chocolatey. There is more of that sort of slightly bitter anise, bitter licorice notes coming through there, but followed by juicy red fruit. It's juicy red plum. There's a lovely acidity there. The structure is fine, it's velvety smooth, there's plentiful but quite ripe tannins. There's a touch of graininess, and as I say, there's a bitterness, and the fine tannins are combining with the acidity to create this sort of mouth-watering bitterness. The finish shows this quite high ripeness, red plum, almost through to sort of stewed plum, and the structure lasts throughout the whole wine very smoothly. It doesn't particularly stand out. It has this velvety texture and there's a lovely density. The wine is probably medium to full-bodied. It's not a huge wine. The alcohol is giving heady notes to the back palate. It's 14.5%, but actually there's plenty of ripe fruit to combine with it, and so it doesn't particularly feel hot, although the presence of the alcohol is obviously there. You know it's there, but you can see that it's balanced. I think also the acidity enlivening the finish helps to keep the alcohol in check there quite nicely. So we've got a wine here that is completely mature, it's showing very nicely, probably has the ability to age 4 or 5 years longer, I would think, maybe slightly longer than that. It's beautiful balance, it's well structured, that good acidity. It's going to keep it together for quite a while. But it's a wine that's actually been made to drink at a relatively young age, probably within its first 10 years. And I think it's fulfilling that brief really well. The Wine Searcher aggregated score that I've seen for this vintage is 90 out of 100. And there are a few critics who were up to about 92 on this. But yes, I think that's a very reasonable score for a wine that has some lovely character, some good freshness, some structure, and will have the ability to age a bit. So thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the tasting. If you have enjoyed it, do please press the like button. Do please consider signing up and subscribing to our channel. We'd really appreciate your support. If you have any comments you want to leave, please pop those in the comments box below. That would be fantastic. We do love to hear your feedback on the wines we're looking at, the tastings we're doing, or anything else that relates to it. If you have friends you think might like to watch the video, do please think about passing it on to them and forwarding it. So yes, thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that you'll be able to find some time and come and join us for another tasting in the very near future. Thanks again. Bye for now.